and welcome to this very special viewers advisory for Hispanic Heritage Month. My name is Darlene, and I work at the Beltsville branch.
Hi, everybody. My name is Elizabeth Ajunwa, and I work at the Glenarden branch.
Right, so today we're going to talk about some films and shows by Latinx creators and also some Latinx actors and actresses. So it'll be a general discussion, and we hope that you can join in. All right, so we're going to start first with a question. So this one's for you, Elizabeth. Who is your favorite Latinx film director and why?
There's a few of them, but I think there's two that comes to mind, so I guess I'm kind of cheating on this question. Alfonso Cuarón and Guillermo del Toro. Those are, the main staples. But they both made films that really, I think about them a lot and they just stick in your mind. And probably Alfonso Cuarón, just because he has like a very wide, broad resume of movies that he's made, from Gravity to Y Tu Mamá También. So he might be maybe the top right now. So that'll be my answer, Alfonso Cuarón.
Yeah, I feel like I'm the same. I was thinking between both of them for the longest time, and then I rewatched Y Tu Mamá También recently because it's on Netflix, and I just thought, I think it's just Cuarón. He's just a really great director. He has a lot of films that I really enjoy, and you just always know his films just from watching it. Like, he has a very distinct style, which is kind of a question I'll ask in a bit as well. He just has a really distinct style that I really like. Basically, where he'll kind of pan away from the protagonist as if giving you a sneak peek into that film's world beyond their view. And I just really enjoy that. I guess I didn't even realize like how powerful that was until I rewatched Y Tu Mamá También. And there was a particular scene where they're all taking a road trip, and so they're like looking ahead, and then you see a memorial for I guess someone had passed away on that road, and you're like looking straight at it, and as an audience member I think you're still pretty interested in what's going on because it takes you outside of the film, at least in the moment, for a bit. And the characters continue to look straight forward, but then you have like the camera panning back to the little mural, or I don't know, it wasn't really a mural, but something just kind of to commemorate their death. And so I just really liked that. I was like, okay, because I actually was interested in that, and you kind of just still took me there. I just really love that about his style.
I agree. He did Roma, right?
Yeah, he did.
Yeah, and there's a lot of shots like that where you're just kind of like there's something going on, but then you're seeing this like pan of all these things at the same time. So I agree with you on that.
Yeah, he does it very often. He even did it in the Harry Potter film that he did, the one that he did, the best one, in my opinion.
Okay. Debatable, but
I don't know.
I like that one. I like that one.
I mean, it was like the blueprint, I guess, for like the rest of the film after that, because they were pretty dark after that.
The next question we have here is, what is your favorite movie by a Latinx creator and writer, director, and why?
So I feel like this is the reason why it was a toss-up between Cuarón and Guillermo del Toro, and that's because Guillermo del Toro, I think, actually is a director of my favorite Latinx film. And so he did Pan's Labyrinth, and it's such a beautiful movie.
It really is. That was going to be my
answer. So yeah, we're really similar in that way then. But yeah, I really enjoyed Pan's Labyrinth, and just like the tone, the setting, the cinematography, I mean, just the colors, the way that he kind of played with like fairy tale tropes. I just enjoyed like every aspect of that movie. Yeah. And it was part of like, I know he had like, it's sort of like his Spanish trilogy, or like focusing on like this the war or the Spanish involvement in the war, um, especially with like the fascism going on. So yeah, I can't remember what the first film in that like sort of trilogy. I don't think it's like a known trilogy, but like it's definitely like he's planning to do like a third one kind of in
Mhm.
that same vein.
Yeah, they're like all related.
Hmm.
I've only seen Pan's Labyrinth within that, but yeah, I love that movie. It's so weird and like but beautiful and um, really heartbreaking. When I saw that movie, I was still quite young, I think, and I don't know. I feel like that was a film that I saw and it changed how I watched movies. It wasn't in English, I had those
Hmm.
subtitles. It's and it was something that I don't know if it would be considered mainstream, but a lot of people recognize that film. And yeah, I think it's beautiful.
It's a cult favorite, and I wonder how many people were introduced to foreign films with it.
Mhm,
Because I feel like almost every few years we just have a foreign film that kind of just takes the world by storm. I don't know
mhm.
that like Pan's Labyrinth was to that extent, but I do know that a lot of people enjoy it and are still, they still kind of like learn about it now, even now because it's on streaming sites. Like I think that one's on Netflix. So if anyone wanted to tune or watch it, if they hadn't, um, yeah. All right. So our next one, and everyone who's like watching, feel free to kind of discuss your own favorite films and your own favorite directors. We'd love to hear them. All right. So, is there a Latinx director with a distinct style? And if so, describe it.
I mean, I feel like we talked about
Yeah.
Alfonso Cuarón and Guillermo del Toro, and there's others. So I don't want to like negate other people like in your you too who he has a very like I would say intense style. Um, like long one take scenes. Like
Yeah.
really like you have to like he really is into like the character and like character development. So yeah, that's someone who's coming to mind as well because I really like his stuff. I really liked Birdman.
Mhm.
Um, I have not seen The Revenant actually, but
Yeah, I
that's
haven't either.
yeah. I know a lot of people like that, but I remember really really liking Birdman. Um, and his style is very distinct as well.
Yeah, I mean, so I've seen Amores Perros and Beautiful, and I know for those, I mean, another distinctive part of, or another distinctive aspect of his filmmaking is that he'll normally have like a handheld. So there's like it just kind of looks a little chaotic whenever you see it, but it does
Hmm.
make it more realistic,
Hmm.
especially because he tries to get like really realistic storylines or have realistic storylines. I think he's kind of shifted a bit in tone because I don't know how realistic The Revenant is or like Birdman exactly. But yeah, he has a really distinctive style as well. And I think another thing that plays into it is kind of just the cinematographers that they choose. Because I think he has a working or had a working relationship. I want to say it was with Rodrigo Prieto. I think he's the person who did Beautiful for sure for him. So that also influences sort of like how a director's films kind of show up.
Yeah. Um, Next question. Who are some of your favorite Latinx actors and actresses?
Hmm. So I actually was thinking about this question a lot because from actors, like I knew straight away like three actors on the top of my head that I really like, but I kind of struggled for actresses because there are so many that I know of and that are in movies that I enjoyed, but that they would be considered favorite. um that would be, like I don't think I have a favorite actress. But for actors it would be like Diego Luna, Gael Garcia Bernal. Both of them are in a lot of Spanish speaking films,
Yeah.
especially a lot with critical acclaim.
Hmm.
And um Oscar Isaac, I think of recent, yeah. I really like Oscar Isaac.
Because he's attractive.
Yes, primarily. Just kidding. But he's also, yeah,
A
he's
great
also been
actor,
in some
yeah.
really good movies. Like I
Mhm.
liked Ex Machina a lot,
Yeah,
and I think he was phenomenal in that.
he's great in Ex Machina. He's in another movie, Inside Llewyn Davis, which is,
Mm,
I thought was a beautiful film. Um, it's just like this, like quiet, a little bit depressing at times film,
hmm
but he was really, really great in it. And that was actually one of the first places I noticed him.
Oh,
So he's a great actor.
okay.
Um,
So it wasn't the Star Wars film.
no, no, Star Wars was not how I first. I was happy for him that he got Star Wars because I was like, yeah, he
Yeah.
was in that movie that I watched.
And then they didn't really do much with his character, but it's okay.
Yeah.
We move on.
Um,
But for actresses, I mean, do you have any favorite actresses?
I mean, you know who comes to mind? Jennifer Lopez, but I can't say she's like a favorite actress. It's just she's in everything. So,
Yeah. Yeah, I was thinking it would be so easy to answer this question if I was a really big fan of Jennifer Lopez.
yeah, I mean, I don't dislike Jennifer Lopez.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say she's my favorite. Probably, I mean, Selma Hayek
hmm
is a really great actress and also has a lot of acclaim. So she probably would be one of my favorites. There's actually an Afro Latino actress that I
hmm
really love, Gina Torres.
Oh,
She's more so known for her TV work, but I just love her. She was in Xena. She was in a ton of like shows, Alias, and um, she was in Suits. And then there's like a newer version with her called Pearson. So she's an actress
mhm.
I really like. Someone said in the comments, not Gina Rodriguez, but you know, I like Gina Rodriguez. I think she's a good actress.
I
um,
mean, if we are just judging her based on her acting,
yes,
then sure,
she
she's a
definitely
great
has maybe
actress.
not made the best PR moves, but
Mm.
I think she's you know she's all right. She's okay.
I mean, maybe lacks a bit of self-awareness.
Yeah, you know, but
Doesn't realize when she shouldn't be in a conversation or in the conversation.
right. And I mean, we don't need to go into it here, but I'm sure people can look up what she said.
Very true.
But I really think she's a pretty good actress. I was thinking of America Ferrera as well,
mm,
because she's in a lot of things that I think maybe we might bring her up again in another question that we have. But um, I was a huge fan of the show Ugly Betty when I was in high school.
mhm.
Related to it a lot. So America Ferrera is one as well.
Yeah, someone said Rita Moreno, who's, I mean, an icon at this
Yeah,
point.
and she's in a lot of things, but she was in Jane the Virgin with Gina Rodriguez, I
She
think.
was. She was in One Day at a Time recently. Back, she was in West Side Story, which we've talked about.
We can
We
talk
are
about
not,
it again.
yeah, we are not big West Side Story fans. If
Yeah, you know,
anyone wants to debate us on
is
that, you're
that bad
welcome.
that we don't like that movie? Because um, I don't know. I think also Rita Moreno is an icon and all of that. But and her character, I think she got an Oscar nomination for her character, or Oscar for that.
Yeah.
But
So she got her due. I mean, I think I was reading up on it yesterday as well, and I think originally they wanted her to play Maria, like the title
mhm,
character, but then I think execs were just like, it won't sell if
mhm,
you have a Latina actress
mhm,
playing the lead role, and so they gave it to Natalie Wood. But Natalie Wood still then took on a lot of Rita's mannerisms in
right,
order to do it, and it's kind
right.
of just like you're not given you weren't given the credit at the time by top billing and basically being the star, but you still got your Oscars. So
Mhm,
in the end, who really won?
you won. Um, yeah, I think I think that's a lesson for Hollywood. It's like just have faith in the people,
Yeah.
like let people because it's like you had this whole story about, I guess West Side Story is white people versus Latinos, and is it New York? I don't even know.
We're not invested
I
enough
apologize
to
to West Side
remember.
Story standard to the people who love it, but it's like there a lot of the characters are white, like on both sides. So that was like, okay, you know. And then they're remaking West Side Story, and I'm like, who is like asking for a story? Okay.
Well, they're just remaking everything, I think, at this point.
I think so.
Yeah. Alexis Bedell from Gilmore Girls, if
She
anyone.
is.
She
Um,
is Latinx. She's of
yeah,
Argentine and Mexican descent.
right. I mean, I think there's a lot of people who are out there who people don't know are Hispanic or Latinx. Like I was looking, Martin Sheen, he was West Wing, and I think if anyone watches Grace and Frankie or any of those shows, he's in that. But I mean, most people know that he's Hispanic because of his son Emilio Estevez, who didn't like use a stage name. But yeah, there's a lot of people out there, and people don't even know.
Yeah.
And you know what? I was thinking about Alexis Bedell because of Sisterhood and the Traveling Pants. And like, I'm like, that's basically like two characters in that movie who are Latinx and nobody. Like,
yeah, you wouldn't think of it as a traditionally Latinx representation, but yes, we got Sisterhood and the Traveling Pants.
Right.
Probably because her character is like from Greece or something.
Yeah, something.
Yeah. And obviously America Ferrera plays the more like conventional Latinx character that you would just know just by looking at her. Which, you know, problems arise from that too. Just the fact that I think we often kind of take away people's like Latinx identity by like categorizing them as something else, even though that's what they identify as. So when was the first time you noticed Latinx representation on film?
I don't know why this question is so hard for me. Because I think I just think of like a bunch of different things. The first thing I think when we were first kind of brainstorming doing this, the first thing that came to mind was this movie I had seen as a kid. I can't remember if I saw it like in this after school special or something, but it's called Sweet 15. It's like a 90s film. Or maybe it was like a made for TV movie type thing about a girl who's turning 15 and wants to have a quinceanera and is just like living her best life in like late 80s, early 90s America. And she, throughout the film, she's kind of like realizing her culture, as well as she's realizing some things about her father, who's kind of strict. And you end up finding out that her father is undocumented and just having to like deal with that, and also being a teenager. So that was probably one of the first ones I was like, oh, this is like a different culture I haven't seen before or really engaged with before. And then there's two other films, TV shows. There's one, when we first talked about it, I called it Si Se Puede, and that's not what it's called. I gotta pick it up. It's a Disney film. I don't know if anyone has seen that, but it's a Disney film, and America Ferrera is also in that. So that was one. And there was this TV show, only lasted 2 seasons on Nickelodeon, called Hyena. And that one was, I think that was actually very impactful for me. So that, and then I think finally Selena with J-Lo.
Yeah, I feel like, Hyena, like someone had put it on Twitter, like the what is it, the theme song? And it just like brought back memories, and I was like, oh my god, I didn't even remember that this existed. We should not let that die.
I would sing the theme song, but I don't want to mess up any like copyright.
But yeah, I guess for me, I think I grew up watching a lot of like Latinos on film or on TV because I would watch things on like Univision. But if I was thinking If I'm thinking of, I guess like in an American context, I feel like, or like Hollywood context, I would say it would probably be Selena.
Mm-hmm.
I think that would be like the first English language film I watched where there was like Latinx characters in it. Or I guess in this case, portrayals of real people. Um, and then yeah, and then I was thinking about it, and I guess when I was little, I guess I also thought of like Spy Kids and Gotta Kick It Up. Those came around the same time, like 2001, 2002. I was like obsessed. I think then is when I really thought about representation, and seeing like the representation of Latinx in Hollywood.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. There was something. There was something about. Carlos from Magic School Bus was my first exposure to
Yeah.
America. I
Oh,
mean, yeah.
oh.
Wow, I totally forgot that he was a Latinx character. I used to love Magic School Bus as
Oh,
well.
yeah. Great theme song as well.
Exactly. Then they brought it back. It's not the same.
No.
Yeah, so what was I saying about Spy Kids? And like,
Representation.
yeah, kind of like seeing the representation of Latinx in film, like in Hollywood.
You said there was something about that movie that you would do as a kid.
Oh. Yes, I knew how to say like I don't know if anyone remembers that movie, but Carmen and Junie both have like really long names, and that's like their password to get in to like their secret hideout. And I remember I was like obsessed with that movie, and so I memorized her name. But then I also went and asked my parents for like what our second what is it like our second last names were, so that I could like lengthen my name. I will spare you guys from having to hear that. Also privacy reasons.
Yeah. But
But yeah.
I mean, I think I wanted you to share that story because I think that's such a good example of representation of how you feel like, oh, this is like me, um, because Spy Kids, and we didn't mention in like favorite actors and actresses Antonio Banderas, who is,
Mm.
you know,
Yeah, well, if we're talking about Latinx, then I don't think Antonio Banderas falls into that. But if we broaden it to like Hispanic,
yeah, for
then
sure.
yes, Antonio Banderas was definitely a driving force in kind of the Latin craze in the 90s.
Yeah. And I think he definitely is, I guess we can talk about this later, but like, I guess my image of what that looks like in the
Mm,
media. So, yeah, Spy
yeah.
Kids.
Yeah, Carmen Elisa es bonita. um, One thing about Gotta Kick It Up, when you mentioned it, I remember we both talked about it before, and we are just like, I think at the time we weren't very critical of it. And then later we watched, or no, I watched it recently. I don't know if you had watched it recently too, but we were just like, wow, it was very much like a white savior film.
Yeah,
And you wouldn't have thought about that as a child, but I think rewatching it, it was kind of hard to get through. Like I kind of forced myself because I was like, I'm already halfway through, but it
yeah,
wasn't.
I watched it relatively recently, and I remember thinking like, why is it so much about this white lady? Like this is not, this definitely the stories of the girls who are on the cheerleading squad. Um, their stories are more compelling, and then it kind of ends up kind of being about her. So yeah, I definitely look at that movie with new eyes. I still appreciate it because I just had so much fun watching it as a kid. But yeah, it definitely has like those problematic tropes that we see, like freedom riders. I think Jennifer Reyes says like that's for sure along that vein. There's another movie that came out not too long ago. I can't remember if it was like Kevin Costner and it was like a running group. I can't remember what it's called, so I probably shouldn't have mentioned it, but it was kind of similar, you know, white coach, white teacher comes in and, saves the day. And
It's a popular trope.
mine
Like,
along those lines. I don't know why those movies keep getting made, but they do. Someone out there likes them.
I guess.
Yeah.
Yes. And Desi Arnaz too is a really interesting he's an interesting actor as well because that was in the 50s, right?
Mhm.
Um yeah. So there weren't that many Latinx characters at that time. I know that we had just like um it's a country like Americans had just kind of come back from World War II and just like rebuilding the economy, and I think um they had been trying to appeal to the Latin American market because they couldn't appeal to the European market. So, um, yeah, so they did have some movies with Latinx characters, but then that kind of just fell by the wayside. And I feel like he just kind of got to stay on because he was married to Lucille Ball, and she kind of had a really big career. And so, not really for his own merits per se.
He did
Um,
have his own show for a while. He had like his own, he had a radio show. He did
mhm.
have his own thing. So I think he was famous in his own right. But I do think like Lucille Ball's like fame just overshadowed
Yeah. I
everything.
mean, and I feel like it took him into the 50s,
Mhm.
though.
Yeah.
Like maybe he wouldn't have had that kind of like career had it
Mhm.
not been for Lucille Ball.
Yeah, because it couldn't have been, that show couldn't have been the Desi Arnaz show.
Yeah, I
Right?
couldn't have.
Yeah, like I don't think so. We would love for that to have been now, but I don't think that's what it would have been. Um, I mean, even in the show, it's not like her name is Lucille Arnaz. It's the Lucille Ball show. So,
That is very true.
yeah. Uh, which the next question is: there a particular Latinx character in a film that resonated with you, and why?
I guess I would say I really tried to kind of think about all the Latinx films that I've watched to see, who I resonated with the most. And I think I just came away um, with Selena. And I think it's mostly because I didn't, I think before then and since then, I haven't seen anyone gravitate towards someone outside of their culture. Or I guess before then, I hadn't seen someone gravitate towards someone outside of their culture quite like they did Selena. Like, I feel like people outside of the Latinx community also really enjoyed her songs and really liked that film. Um, and that she was kind of like an icon to them as well. And I don't think that I had really seen something like that before. So I think I just appreciated her as a person, but also the way that she was immortalized in that film, and just the fact that people still kind of watch that film and newer generations kind of are being like kind of learn about her and her very short but impactful career.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I think Selena is probably like your everyone's go-to film. Yeah, and I think that film is. I think I agree with you because like that definitely was another introduction into, I guess Latinx culture for me, and I I remember, I don't know, there's like a scene in the movie where she goes to a store and like someone doesn't like really want to wait on her, and then they
Mm.
realize that she's famous, and it's like I don't know, I just love that scene, and I felt like I don't know, it kind of is, it reminded me of Pretty Woman, but it was
Hmm.
like not a white woman, it was like a Latinx character having
Yeah,
happened to them. So
that
um,
is such a satisfying
yeah,
scene.
it's so satisfying. So um, I guess my answer for this is a movie called Chico and Rita.
Mm.
It's an animated film, and it's an animated film, but it's for adults. It's not for children. Um, and I just really love that movie. I think I appreciated it because it's It's based in Cuba, and it's kind of like takes place in different parts of time a little bit. So there's like you are in kind of 50s Cuba, and there's a musician, and he falls in love with this woman, and it's just like a love story, and both of the characters are Afro Latin characters, and I just thought it just is such a beautiful movie, such a love story, and just it's it's all in Spanish. It's just like jazzy and seductive, and I just really resonated with seeing two Black people in love, and then seeing that and them speaking Spanish. It really resonated with me, and um, yes, so
Yeah,
so
I mean, if we're going to talk about representation, I feel like we should mention the fact that even, Latinx representation can be kind of limiting already. But even then, when we do see these representations, it's usually not Black Latinx
mhm,
representation. And maybe even when there is like a Black Latinx like actress or actor playing a role, oftentimes their Latinidad is kind of erased.
mhm,
Um, and I mean, I don't know that necessarily they might care about that. But I do think that it's harder for people to associate Latinidad with them
mhm,
because of that. I think, sometimes even now I feel like people say, oh, we don't have enough representation. And I'm just like, actually, there's like like a big rise in Black Latinx actors and actresses, but
mhm.
it's only because they don't fit your definition of what being Latinx means that you probably didn't think of them as Latinx, or
Right,
you didn't think of that as representation.
right.
Yeah, and indigenous representation as well.
Mhm,
Yep.
mhm. And I see Cinnamon made a comment, "Pretty Woman, but Latinx style." Definitely is a good description. Um, I recently watched a roundtable of different Afro Latinx actors and actresses, and they were talking about just their experiences and how just recently they're getting roles where they're able to play characters that are written as Latin
Mm.
or Latinx, and um, an actor people may know, Laz Alonso. He's been in Avatar and Stomp the Yard and other different shows and movies. He was talking about his experience and how he would often, go out for a character and wouldn't. And they were like, "Well, you were great, but you don't look the look we're talking about, the look that we have." And similar actress singer Amara La Negra, she talked about her experience because she has like the more of the I think the experience of like the Univision experience, like having been on those types of shows. And same thing, like, you don't fit the look, you don't fit that Sofia Vergara look that we're looking for.
Hmm.
So I think, and I think, I think it's changing a little bit. We're starting to see that more.
Yeah, I feel like I think even in a Charmed reboot, there might be a Latinx
Mhm.
character. Yeah, and she's Black Latinx, if
Yep.
I'm not
Yep.
mistaken. So yeah, I mean, it's totally there is more representation, and I can see where they feel like now is when there are actually characters out there being written for their particular identity, I
Mhm.
guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
And one film that comes to mind is um Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, because that's
Mm.
Miles Morales. Wasn't played by a Latinx actor,
Oh,
but
really?
I am hoping that when they bring it to live, like real life, it will be. But I, I did like, I love that movie, and the person who played the Miles in the movie, he talked about not really realizing how he was also representing Latinx culture when he was doing this role. And as he's, people start to hear that he's doing this role, and he started to meet people and then thanking him for the representation and saying like, hey, I've never seen anyone who's like me on screen. He started to realize like this was what he was doing. He was, being able to show that representation. So I definitely think it's coming, and I hope there's more more to come.
Yeah, I was just reminded that Rosario Dawson also has
Yeah.
been, I mean, she's been in a lot of movies. I think
Mhm.
even back, I don't know but she was definitely in movies like in the early 2000s.
Mhm.
Um, so she's definitely Black Latinx. And then Rosa Salazar. I actually don't know much about Rosa Salazar, but apparently she's from PG County and went to Eleanor Roosevelt.
That's awesome. Yay. So people are out here. They are, making work happen. um,
Yes.
yeah. I think we just talked about your next question a little bit,
Okay.
but how has it changed throughout the lifetime? Like how has
Yeah.
representation changed? We were talking about this. I think there's just and I think this is a thing for a lot of different minority groups. And when it comes to Hollywood, it's just like there's like pockets of times where things are popular. Like in the
Mhm.
90s, it was like a little craze. And then I felt like there was like this little thing early 2000s. And then like it feels like it's coming back again. Um, and I'm saying this specifically with Latinx, but I feel like that happens with the African American Black community. You feel like there's like a time where you just see a lot of representation and then it disappears, and then it comes back again. So I don't know. I don't know what your thoughts are on that, but I just feel like there's like the Latin craze and then it goes away.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. I took a class in college about like Latinx representation and pop culture. So I kind of have seen like kind of the rise and fall. And you're right. I mean, it kind of just goes up and then it goes back down. And then there's like periods of like stagnation. And then, yeah, in the 90s, there was this big Latin craze. Speaking about Antonio Banderas, he's kind of part of that. Jennifer Lopez, and just a few others. And yeah, I mean, then I think it was kind of just like it did go down a bit. And now we do see a rise again. And I don't know, I kind of hope that with the amount of criticism that Hollywood gets on representation and just people showing out for some of these movies that show greater representation, um, that kind of means that this time it's here to stay and it's not a fad again and it's not going to dip again. So, I mean, I agree with you. I do think that it kind of, there's like rise and fall. And I just hope that this time it kind of just stays.
Mhm.
And that just different voices are highlighted as well. So, not just, not just Latinx, not just like white Latinx, or the traditional, I guess, version of what you think of when you think of Latinx, but also Black Latinx and Indigenous voices as well.
Yeah. Um, do you feel there is more openness to international and foreign language films now?
I think so. I think so. Because like I think we had talked earlier about Pan's Labyrinth, and how people think that a lot of people think of it as a really good movie. It is a
Mhm.
cult favorite.
Yeah.
And there are so many others in the past that have gotten, some acclaim. And then I just feel like Parasite just kind of really took off last year.
Hmm.
And people just, I think they're just finally realizing, and we have more access to these films. I think they're just realizing that there's just a greater world of like film and like television shows abroad, um, that kind of just give you different perspective, different narratives, and they may not all be in English, but it's okay because you still understand subtitles, so you will understand the context of it. And yeah, I just feel like it is a universal medium, and I feel like more people are kind of getting a sense of that.
Yeah, I agree. And I think more and more, I feel like people are remaking Spanish language films less. Like it's just, I mean, I always feel like the remake of like a foreign language film is never as great, but I think more so you're starting to see that people are just like showing that foreign language film in the theater instead of
Mm-hmm.
like remaking it. And I just hope we see more of that. I think Roma is a really good example of a film that, I mean, it was on Netflix and you could just, everyone could watch it. And yeah, I think there's more. You know,
Yeah, I mean, it feels weird that there are certain films that you think that naturally they should be in a certain language, but then they make the choice to make them in English. And I guess I'm thinking of Frida.
mm,
Salma Hayek has discussed at length sort of the trouble that she went through for that movie. And if you haven't read her op-ed piece about Weinstein and everything that went down, you should definitely look it up. But I know that one of the things was that they made it English so that it could appeal to a wide audience. And it just kind of sucks because, Frida's native language was Spanish. She didn't even particularly like her time in America. So it just, or even abroad in Europe that much. So it didn't really make sense for her as a character and to be faithful to her biopic. But they had to make certain choices based on what execs thought would actually sell.
mhm.
um yeah, and I mean, I know that you're saying that there are a lot of films that are just kind of enjoyed in their own language, but I mean, just as much, I know that there was talk of making an American remake of Parasite, like a TV show version of it, and then an American version of Train to Busan, which is
Mhm.
also on
Yeah, so do
Netflix.
I. It's on Netflix. Watch it, guys.
Yeah, like the Korean one is already
Right.
great on its own. You don't really need to remake it, but yeah, this idea that
But I
there's
feel
more
like
money to be
now that
made.
there's more pushback to that. Like I feel like in the
Hmm.
past it would have just been made. Like they would have just made it. Whereas people are like, no, you don't need to do that. Thanks.
Yeah,
um,
yeah,
so I'm
the
hoping
original exists.
it's like that.
All right. So what is one international, particularly Latin American film that you'd recommend to people?
um, all of the films that we've mentioned so far. Um, we're going to do a film discussion with this movie, but Real Women Have Curves. That's a movie I would suggest for people to watch. Um, yes, I'm going to say that one.
Real Women Have Curves. I
Mhm.
don't know if I necessarily think of it as international. I mean, I guess,
I guess not. I guess I was thinking more of a Latin American film,
yeah.
but
Yeah,
it's.
technically it falls under that.
Mhm.
um, so I definitely love our one of our resources is Canopy, where you can watch a lot of movies online with your library card. And so I've been using the service a lot more recently, and I came across a movie. I don't know how to pronounce it because it's actually an indigenous word, so it means volcano. But I think it's like Ixcanul. Um, Let me just double check. Yeah, it's like Ixcanul.
Mhm.
And I really enjoyed it because like we don't really see a lot of representation of indigenous narratives in Latinx films, and even then it's never really by an indigenous filmmaker, and this wasn't either. um, this wasn't by by an indigenous creator, but I mean, I think he really took his time to try um, to learn the language, or have experts on hand to kind of guide the film so that it felt very realistic and very true to that culture. And it's just a very beautiful film. So it follows this young girl, and so it's sort of like a coming of age, um, kind of just seeing her kind of in her own culture and thinking about America as sort of like this place of opportunity, but kind of still being tied down to her traditional roots, and
Mhm.
just the the dichotomy between those. But it's, I don't know, I don't want to give like more away, but
So
I
like
think
the
it was
watch
a really,
canopy.
yeah, definitely watch it on Canopy. But it was definitely a beautifully shot movie, and I think it really showcased that indigenous people's culture very well. And I think that it, I don't know, I think the way that he did it, it was, you really felt connected to the title character, and she is indigenous, the actress who
Mhm.
played her.
Yeah, I'm gonna check that out. I'm gonna
Yes,
watch it.
please do.
Do you feel that there is a Latinx representation problem in film?
um, so I mean, we kind of discussed this before.
Mhm.
I do think that there is greater representation, but I wouldn't necessarily say that it's a problem as much now. But I guess I'm just like afraid of it kind of going back down.
Mhm.
And I mean, I still think that there's room for improvement. Like we have some Latinx representation, but I feel like it's few and far in between. And then a lot of times, especially like some of the older films, I just felt like they were very loudly Latinx. And that's not a bad thing, but I felt like it just kind of needed to call itself like attention to itself as a Latinx film. And it
Mhm.
didn't just kind of let these characters exist as just like normal everyday people.
Mhm.
And I think that's actually one thing that I really appreciate about Real Women Have Curves. Is that it kind of just was like a quiet film. You
Mhm.
know, it wasn't like Sweet 15 that's like, oh, quinceañera and like
Mhm.
deportation and like,
Yeah.
like all these like issues that really affect the Latinx community. Sometimes I enjoy films where it's like, yeah, you have a Latinx character, but um, it's not so defining. Like it doesn't other them.
Right. Yeah, I before we did this, I watched another film on Canopy called Tortilla Soup.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of like that. It still has the kind of that 90s-ness to it that does call attention to, certain things in a way. But I felt like that was probably the closest the 90s era gets to a quiet film. Um, and just like them kind of living their lives and their father. If you haven't heard of Tortilla Soup, it's a movie about a man who is a widower and has three daughters and his relationship to them, um, and how it changes over time in the film. And yeah, I thought that was just like, I actually really related to that because um, being in a household that English is not the only language that's spoken, and then you're kind of speaking like broken versions of, oh, like he was like no Spanglish, and I could kind of relate to that, and just like having this kind of like English and another language floating around, and that just being like normal and not a big deal. Um, so I would also suggest Tortilla Soup for anyone who is interested. Um,
And when is that from? You said it was from the 90s, or it just felt very
Yeah, it's
90s?
90s. It's 90s.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was made in the 90s. I can't remember what year. Maybe, yeah, I can't remember what year, but definitely 90s. Um,
Okay.
and I think there's a problem with representation in general. I
Yeah.
think if we're talking specifically about Hispanic, Latinx representation, I think it's what we were talking about earlier. We're seeing more, and now it needs to be a broader, more expansive view of what being Latinx looks like, and um, you know, realizing that again, there's Afro Latinos, there's Indigenous people, there's a wide variety, and I still feel like the story is still um, very stereotypical in a lot of ways, and I think we even talked about how um, a lot of the narratives usually are Mexican narratives, so even
Mm-hmm.
getting other stories from other countries. So, I mean, I think lately we see a lot of Puerto Rican, a lot of Mexican, and that's kind of like what you see in America. So, just having a wider, broader view of a huge culture.
Yeah. I mean, I agree with that. I feel like, I mean, like we did talk about it. And how a lot of the movies that we were discussing, and a lot of the directors and the actors and actresses are of like three pretty, distinct nationalities. They tend to be Mexican, Puerto Rican, or Cuban. Those are like the longest immigrants. Well, I mean, there's like a specific reason why each of them have like strong cultural ties to America. So I won't like get into that. But yeah, I mean, I guess I would like to give more voice, or I would hope that we would kind of look to narratives from other places that don't really get to tell their story as much, which is why I had recommended Ixcanul, which I don't think I'm saying that correctly, because that one was by a Guatemalan director. And then there is a movie, another one on Canopy, and I can't remember where it was from, but it was definitely more of a Black Latinx representation, and that was, or Afro Latinx, and that was Pelo Malo, Bad Hair.
Yeah.
And I thought that was a really great film in terms of exploring like gender identity and like hair and just like the way that you look and the certain, I guess, the way that toxic masculinity and machismo kind of play into Latinx families and the roles that people are expected to play, and just how all of that can be like transferred onto a little kid that is still like growing and trying to find themselves. But their worldview is only as big or as wide as like their parents or their close loved ones. And yeah, that was a really devastating movie because you wanted to be there and like be accepting of him in a way that his mom really isn't. Yeah.
I really want to see that movie. But speaking of kids, one movie I think maybe many people have probably already seen is Coco. I really love that movie. I think that was, I mean, I know it comes from the Disney machine, but I think they got it right with the people who created the film, and it's clear that I know there's controversies with the film and and some of the characters, but I mean, I cried watching it. So,
I think we all cried.
So that's, I think, Coco. And there's actually another movie. This came out before Coco, kind of a similar look, actually, called The Book of Life.
Guillermo del Toro was a producer.
Yeah, and Zoe Saldana was like a voice in it. I think Diego Luna also was a voice, and then Channing Tatum randomly was a voice. But yeah, I mean, there's some love for Coco in the comments. I love Coco, but I actually would suggest, checking out The Book of Life. Not, as high profile, and came out a few years before, but very well made film. So both animated and more lighthearted. So, if you don't want to show your kids Pelo Malo, maybe show them Coco, Book of Life.
Yeah. Oh, I loved Coco. I just all I have like from my grandparents, I only have my grandmother's left. So I don't know, it hit close to home. I was just like bawling, like, no.
Yeah.
But it was such a sweet movie. I really enjoyed it. And I do think that you're right. They got like the right people involved to kind of showcase that culture.
Yeah. You have the last question.
I can have a question. All right. So is there a Latinx film that you haven't seen but would like to?
Yes. So, I mean, there's a lot of them, but there's a film that was actually going to come out in theaters this year that didn't, called In the Heights.
Which one?
In the Heights.
Oh, In the Heights. Yeah. Oh, yeah, with Lin-Manuel.
It was Lin-Manuel Miranda's Tony-winning, first Tony-winning Broadway musical. and they're making it a movie, and I really would like to see that. And I guess we didn't talk about Lin-Manuel Miranda at all, but he's
Yeah.
a good actor and is in a lot of things, especially now. He's like striking the scenes and everything. So that's one I'm really looking forward to seeing, New York in that whole vibe. I'm looking forward to it.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I was pretty excited when I heard about that one. Not because I had like seen the play or anything, but I just thought that it was really interesting. I know that he had, I think, did he do that one before Hamilton?
Yes, yeah, that was before
Okay.
Hamilton.
Yeah, I was really interested to just watch it as well. But I just feel like there's so many movies that just were pushed back. So I hope it still gets like the release it deserves.
Yeah, in the theaters, like people I'm sure would like to see it.
Yeah, I mean it'll be a while, but so you had mentioned Chico and Rita. So
Yes.
I still haven't seen it. Is it
Yeah.
on Canopy? I don't know. I'll
It
find
was on Netflix for a long, and it was on Canopy for a long time. I don't know if it's still on there,
it.
but I really suggest that movie.
Okay.
It's just lovely. It's lovely. I hope you
Yes.
like it, because if you don't like it, then maybe I have bad taste in movies. But I
No, I would probably tell you I liked it, and
yeah.
then even if I didn't, because I would never do that to you.
Thank you. um, yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of movies that I haven't seen that I want to watch. There's actually movies I want to rewatch, like
Mm.
Tambien. Like a lot of these movies, I think I was just too young to understand them, and I really wonder how um, late 20s me would view these movies as opposed to like teenage me.
Yeah.
So, um,
Late 20s can't be old because then that means I'm old.
oh.
No. But yes. I think also I would like to see No.
No.
It's by I think Larain, I think is his last name. And he's actually the director for a movie that we're going to do another viewers advisory on. So we're going to have another viewers advisory October 15 at 7, and it'll be a really similar format to this where you guys can comment and kind of interact with us and guide the conversation. But that one is called Neruda, the one that we will be talking about. And at the same time, we'll also talk about Real Women Have Curves. And so you guys can find Neruda on Canopy, and you can find Real Women Have Curves on Amazon Prime. Yes.
Yeah. Yes.
So not a free subscription, but if you're blessed with Amazon Prime, please watch it and join the conversation.
Yeah. Thank you to everyone who's been making comments. I want to point out some of these, like I think Terrence Anderson talks about reggaeton taking off in the 2000s. And I didn't want to get into music, but I think it is important to mention how much music has influenced, culture and how we see culture. I mean, Chico and Rita makes me think a lot of I do not know why I am blanking on her name, and this is like a disgrace. Celia Cruz.
Oh,
Oh
okay.
no, it's horrible. And it makes me think a lot of her and her influence, and even though she wasn't an actress, like she definitely I think has someone I think about when it comes to this topic as well. So, and Mark Anthony, didn't talk about him, also an actor.
Yeah, I mean, there's several. Like the
Yeah,
90s
there's so
definitely
many.
had an
So many.
explosion of
Yeah,
people. You
it's
had like
definitely,
Shakira and Ricky Martin and
you know,
Mario Lopez.
because like there are some who are kind of acting too. So
That's true.
um, yeah.
That's
But
true.
yeah, I think that's all we had for everyone. Thank you so much for watching. Please join us. I think it's October 15th, like you
Yeah,
said,
October 15 at
for
7.
Neruda, film discussion on Neruda and Will Women Have Curves. Yeah.
Right.
Bye,
Bye,
everybody.
guys.